Hello everybody and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be looking at the corners in the 2025 NFL draft. Obviously, as part of the summer scouting series, I've done every position and this will be the last one other than safety, which will be done sometimes probably within the week. We got some top end talent and some guys I view very differently than consensus as of right now. Maybe trends change, maybe people catch on to what I'm seeing, but man, oh man, I like the top of this class, and let's head right in with my number one corner. My number one corner actually ended up being Notre Dame's Benjamin Morrison, to people's surprise. Heading into his junior year, listed at 6'1", 186, a little thin, but man, oh my, I like this guy. More of a sticky press man corner, pretty easy to like, those type of guys, real smart and good enough athlete to recover and trail closely behind receivers and who he's supposed to be, defending his assignments, everything like that. And like I said, real smart too, and we'll dive deeper into that a little bit later. He also covers the go ball really well, the 9 route, the vertical routes, whatever you want to say. He covers them really well. He gets his head around early in the route, tracks the ball well, keeps really tight coverage, and also plays the ball to break it up at the point as well. I really do like the way Benjamin Morrison played downfield, probably better than anyone else in this class. Very impressive play strength and physicality for his size. We kind of talked about it, and he could fight through some of that traffic, work through bigger receivers and their blocks and everything, and just play stronger overall than you'd expect. 6'1", 186. There are some guys even smaller than that in this class, or even bigger in this class, that both disappointed in terms of physicality. Then when I got to Benjamin Morrison, it was always a little bit better than I thought, and that trend just kept progressing the more I watched. So I really like the way that he played as a smaller corner. 6'1", 186 seems to be the sort of trend that football's heading to nowadays with cornerbacks. Always had his great effort, and he never really missed snaps. I think he showed great work ethic and character on first impressions. Like the first game I watched, even, it was business as usual type of attitude. He'd make a big play, he wouldn't even celebrate. I love that sort of thing. But also just the work that he put in, rep out. And like I said, wasn't really on the sidelines or off the field much. He was in for most and way more than the majority of the snaps. Did a really nice job getting eyes on the quarterback early in the snap, the way that he can monitor and stay aware of the play while shutting someone down. Really impressed. And the fact that he could, turn his head around even in press to the point where he can read, run, pass, and the fact that he can monitor where the quarterback's eyes were. It was just really nice to watch the fact that he can do all this, have that awareness while, in coverage, closely covering at that. I never really saw Morrison lose a foot race downfield. You can only watch so many games, so maybe it happened. Maybe you guys, give me a game where he does get burnt downfield. I don't care. The games that I watched, he never really lost downfield. He also has a good ability to close pretty swiftly and break passes up underneath. That closing speed, acceleration, some of those quickness, traits. He's also really good at taking the right angles, and some of that does tie into some of the quicker stuff, like he can close off angles and whatnot. But keeping the leverage in any scenario he faces, he could really box the receiver and also jump routes. And it's something that stood out with me, and why I kind of said he was smarter, because he would cut an in-cut route or an out-breaking route, and it would look really clean. And if he even broke it up, but I don't think the quarterback would be even dumb enough to throw it that direction, because Benjamin had, again, the ability to keep that leverage in scenarios where that's more valuable, but also taking the right angles to cut and jump some of the routes a little early on, and have that quickness and athletic ability to cut and do all that. Now I'll get to the downside here with Benjamin. There's not much. There's plays where he'd be too worried about getting his head around to watch the quarterback, but he'd end up like losing track and or sight of his assignment and the play at hand. We talked about it. He kept tabs on the quarterback and read his eyes really well, but he had to do that by getting his head around early in the snap. And there are times where he does lose his assignment because he's watching the quarterback instead. In closer coverage, the guy just tends to time the break of the route when his head's turned and just ends up losing the assignment. Morrison can actually get a little handsy or kind of grabby and put himself at risk of being called on a penalty, but he was actually penalized a bit compared to the rest of the class. Watching, I only watched so many games of some of the depth guys to see if any stood out, to see if I need to watch more games, but I watched a lot of the top guys, and still Benjamin had more penalties than you'd like. And no matter what, he's still a light player that occasionally leads to being pushed off his spot or out leveraged in some situations. Bigger receivers, tight ends, stuff like that, ends up getting put off his spot or out leveraged at the point, blocked away from the play or whatever it is. So can't really stop that from happening at 186. You're just literally small and a little light. Morrison's a true press man, shut down type of corner. I love the smarts this kid plays with, along with some of his aggression and effort that he also displays. Really fun to watch, and my cornerback one for a reason. Next guy we'll talk about, Colorado's Travis Hunter, the cornerback wide receiver, plays both sides, phenom, top recruit in his class heading into his junior year, listed at 6'1" and actually a pound lighter than Benjamin Morrison at 185. Travis Hunter, I mean, he's a willing participant in run support to start. If there's a runner in sight, Travis won't hesitate to attack or attempt a tackle. He even wraps up well in open space, does that a little bit better with patience, and like I said, he's just willing, unlike some of these corners that won't really make the effort to, you know, across field to get that and secure a supporting role or someone to be like an alternative if he breaks a tackle. But Hunter's probably a little bit different there. Travis Hunter thrives in press man, where he can dictate, react, and start close to and match and mirror the receiver. I prefer him in press instead of that off man, because I honestly like the ability he has to react when he is close to the receiver. So when he can start a little bit closer, he can dictate that first few steps, and then react when he's a little bit closer to match and mirror the receiver he's seeing. It's much better than him in off man, where he wasn't really the best compared to press. He's still like pretty good in off man, obviously, but just not as good as he was in press. Awareness and overall vision of the play, both behind the line of scrimmage and in coverage, also helps his ability to read plays and use his instincts. You know, he's just kind of aware of everything, even in zone coverage. If he sees like a blown coverage or somewhere that might be open and might have a route working towards there, he'll head that way, and that's some of his instincts. And having the sight of the play allows him to use his second nature of, you know, covering the football field and the ability to kind of read where things are going. I don't think he has the fastest top speed, but his foot quickness and the ability to burst and close looks great on route breaks or in trail technique when the ball is up in the air. You know, Travis Hunter will be able to close on it, and like I said, the foot quickness more than the long speed stands out, and someone I don't think is like an incredible athlete in terms of like 4.2 or even 4.3 speed, but does have some of that quick, and I wouldn't be surprised, you know, come combine time, if he does participate, to see a quicker 10-yard split than the long whole 40 yards would indicate. Last but not least, I think he's a great competitor. He's helping guys on the other team just get up, or he'll credit someone if they block him well with a pat on the ass, or just seems like a good opponent and good guy to go against. Someone I wouldn't, you know, mind being a little competitive with. He just seems to recognize good offense and defense if he's playing receiver or whatever it is. So such a great competitor. Now we get to some of the downside with Travis, and starts with his run defense. And like I said, he may be willing in the run game, but he doesn't have a whole lot of mass or strength as a run defender to challenge physically against, you know, big running backs that are 40 pounds heavier than him. It just doesn't really match up real well, and he doesn't receive that contact real well either. Just a challenge for him physically with the lack of, you know, strength and a little bit of mass on that frame as well. 6'1", 185 is pretty small. Has a small tendency to grab on a little tight and make it more noticeable than other corners I watched. And, you know, guys would stick to their guy because they're kind of grabby, but Travis Hunter, he would like extend, and that's kind of where you notice it, is when his frame isn't really pushed up to the guy, so he's hiding his hands. He's more like out here holding to bring and reel himself back in, instead of other corners that kind of use their frame to hide or disguise it. He's a little bit more noticeable with the way he does it, and maybe does it the same amount as others, but just a little bit more noticeable and recognizable when he's doing it. And when he's playing corner in the Arizona game, I think he struggled with Tacario McMillan, specifically his length and just true size. Hunter physically couldn't reach as far as he could and couldn't find an answer overall that whole game against Tacario McMillan. Just struggled against those long arms, bigger body, and I guess physicality. There's a couple of snaps that stand out when he's almost too nonchalant and lacks intensity, and maybe just tries to play it cool if he gets beat off the release or something, or if he's, you know, not in the right spot, maybe 5 yards up too high, maybe, you know, plays it cool and wants to come back down without showing a whole lot of panic or anything that the quarterback can read, and so maybe lacks some of that intensity and urgency to get back to the zone or to the places he needs to be, even like on curl routes when he needs to stick. Maybe just too nonchalant. And in off man coverage, he has some snaps when he's simply just too far away to close before the ball reaches the receiver. It basically basically takes himself out of the play, and some of the in-breaking routes or stuff he just literally can't get to. He's not physically, quick enough. We talked about foot quickness, but he puts himself at such a disadvantage being so far away that he can't even reach back to where the catch is being made. So it just kind of hurts him there. But off man, like I said, I prefer him in press 100%. And I actually do think he's a better corner than he is a receiver right now. I still think he has an extremely high ceiling at both, especially if he just stuck to one or the other. Even if this happened a year ago to start at Colorado, if he was just a pure corner, I can't imagine how much better he would end up being. But even if he, same conversation for receiver. Honestly, Travis Hunter is such a great athlete, and like I said, extremely high ceiling at both. But I would like to see him, take focus on one, maybe practice with the corners or practice with the receivers, and maybe still play both ways. I don't know. It's really up to him in Colorado, and he does what he can to help his team win, and that's so sick. You can't kind of knock him for that. It's no con in his game, but I do like Travis Hunter a lot as a corner, and I do think, like I said, better corner than receiver right now. Next is probably the guy you would expect to hear higher than 3, but they're all in the same tier for me. Not interchangeable exactly. Will Johnson is 3 for a reason, but Will Johnson, the bigger guy, 6'2", 202, heading into his junior season with Michigan. Coming along with being a little bit bigger, he offers legitimate help and support against the run from the cornerback position. As much as the cornerback position can get involved in the run, he pretty much does it. I do like the way that he can tackle and, again, legitimately help and support the run defense. He's more of a patient decision maker and someone that's comfortable waiting a little bit longer, but with the flip of a switch, he can gain some urgency and attack in certain situations. Is something I like about him. Like I said, flip of a switch, and he's a totally different play style on some of the routes or some of the scenarios he's seeing. So someone I like as a patient corner that can wait and break a little bit further off the play or further off the ball, whatever you want to say, but can also show signs of attacking and a little bit more intensity. Plays the underneath flats and actually deeper zones well when asked to do those things, which is a lot more than you'd think. We're going to hop into that in the cons section, because there's some things I didn't like about some of the stuff he was asked to do at Michigan, but it wasn't that had to do with him. He played those zones well and could play from underneath to the flats, from like deep quarters even to, I bet he could play single man single high pretty well. He plays with a good size, and that translates to his physical ability both at the line and or at the catch point. He plays with impressive strength compared to the rest of the class that we see that aren't listed at 202 pounds. Probably didn't play up to that if I had to guess, but maybe that's where he's at about now, because that's the most recent I had on him. So last year, I don't know if he was quite 202, but if he was, he carries it really well. But again, physical at the line, at the catch point, and played with nice play strength, and quite impressed over the rest of the class in that aspect, I guess. And actually, some of his snaps, when he did have to cover downfield, looked very uncomfortable or kind of messy. Most of it was because he didn't get his head around. He didn't seem completely in control or aware or really poised, I guess, in those situations. He was more, I wouldn't say panicked, but again, uncomfortable, maybe a little more messy than uncomfortable. But when he was covering downfield, whether it was one-on-one or if he was in a deep zone and had to pick someone up one-on-one, it just didn't really look great for him, and had some of those deficiencies there. Some of the better releases and technical things that Marvin Harrison Jr. did caught Will off guard and got him pretty good, both off the line and some of the route breaks and some of the things, like I said, more technically that Marvin Harrison Jr. was good and polished at, definitely caught Will Johnson a little bit off. And you can expect that because he was a sophomore last year, so playing against a guy of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s caliber, it's kind of expected. That's kind of what would separate him and maybe be my corner 1 or 2 is, if he hadn't done some of this stuff, I guess. He spends a lot of time starting a little bit deeper, so the receivers have to run to him instead of vice versa. It's not really testing his athleticism or speed downfield, and a lot of that is like comfort maybe, but spends a lot of time starting and even backing up further downfield, to the point where, again, receivers have to run towards him if they're going to challenge Will Johnson deep, and it just really didn't test a whole lot, in my opinion. And there were some quicker plays that he saw against the offenses he was against that he wasn't really doing anything. He would back up 5 steps and look around him while the ball was already out on the other side of the field. So Will Johnson, definitely a little bit different in that category than the first 2 guys we talked about, where I said press, the guys that can trail, stick to guys, true, real press man land speed athletes sort of corners. And this kind of ties into the last one, but he's playing off man so far off, and he'll even back up after the snap, giving him such a long run if it's an in-breaking route. And when it is an in-breaking route and he needs to catch up, he has to go all out to close on the receiver, making him extremely susceptible to double moves. And it happened to him against double move. Honestly, I was expecting it from game number 1. I watched Will Johnson, for him to just bite the dust on a double move because he plays so far off and gives himself such a disadvantage against some of the in-breaking routes. So when he sees the in-breaking route, he's in a man-to-man assignment. He has to get to him. He's going to have to go all out to close that space and to stick to him man-to-man. So he has to go all out, commit all the way in with all of his weight, speed, and all of that. The receiver then backs out of his route and then flies back past him, catches him a little flat-footed and off guard, and Will Johnson would just get, again, bite the dust, if you will. But overall, Will Johnson, more patient, physical, and bigger corner that most of this class didn't really have. He just had some issues and room to grow, maybe less of an athletic upside to him than others, and the reason he finds himself a little bit deeper. I don't understand. Maybe I need to watch him more and more, because the press, corner, outlook, all that, it was really easy to tell like what they did and didn't do well, what was there and wasn't their fault. So Will Johnson maybe got to take a deeper look and really pay attention for him. Maybe watch like another 3 or 4 games on him and really break it down through the course of a day or a night or something. I don't know. I got to dive in, because there's obviously hype around this kid, and just off basic, first 4 games, not surface scanning, obviously take pretty deep looks to get all these notes, but still maybe disappointed a little bit to expectations. He's still in my tier number 1 for these corners. He's not out of the race by far at all. Actually, I think that is a pretty closely wound top 3 in this corner class. Moving to Sebastian Castro from Iowa, the nickel, aka slot cornerback, the most fun to watch corner in this entire class. He's heading into his graduate year, listed at 5'11", 205. And a reason why he's so fun: the motor and energy are through the roof. He's literally on the field every play and never stops. He just flies around and gives everything he has every given down that he is on the field. He's all over the place and really, really high energy, energetic, through the roof, like I said, and the motor just never stops. The physicality he plays with is very surprising for a guy less than 210 pounds. He can fight tight end blocks and inflict hits without hurting himself. Or I kind of mentioned it actually with Travis Hunter, in the way that he can wrap up or find space in open field. It's not like Sebastian Castro because of the frame that Travis Hunter possesses. It's more diving at the feet and stuff like that. But no, so Sebastian can literally inflict contact without hurting or bouncing off or all that good stuff. He has the mass to withstand some of that. Great eyes and recognition when switching zones and passing assignments onto his teammates, or even underneath, and you're moving with his teammates, or he's supposed to be in man but the guy's in motion on the other side. He's great at communicating, or whatever the ideal situation is. He's pretty good at communicating and having that sort of chemistry, I guess, with his teammates, and that experience being a graduate student probably helps in that sort of situation. I really don't know about his top speed, but his short area quicks and his ability to change direction looks pretty damn good, both in coverage and in space. When you're looking at Sebastian Castro, when he needs to close, sure, he can close in space, and then when he's man-to-man or in a zone and someone enters that zone, he needs to make sure that he doesn't give any room in that zone. He's going to get there in coverage. So I don't know, again, about the top speed. I wouldn't even be able to give you an estimate, but the short area quicks and his ability to change some of those directions and move with his ankles, feet, and everything like that looks, again, pretty damn good. I think some of his kryptonite comes in true man-to-man reps in space when the receiver can break towards the sideline or break over the middle. He still wins sometimes in these situations, and you're going to, as a graduate student, again, I repeat, he has experience, so he's going to win on some of these, but there's definitely, like, the most he gets exploited is in coverage, one-on-one. Slot receiver can have an outbreaker or an in-breaking route, one or the other. You kind of have to play a guessing game, and he doesn't like preconceive anything or doesn't get angles on him early or start with leverage anywhere. He's pretty good at like reacting, and again, using some of those quicks and the ability to change with receivers' directions and movements. He can try to mirror, but that's where some of his downside comes. There's definitely times where he maybe crashes down a little too quick, and when you fly like that, you can over pursue, take bad angles, or just miss tackle tackles and plays in general. So Sebastian Castro maybe saw a little bit of that. Really high energy through the roof every play, gives it everything he has, never stops. He's gonna overrun some of this stuff, and he really is such a high energy, lightning in a box sort of player. I really like Castro as a slot option with his physicality and his coverage, communication skills, everything. It all ties in. It all looks really good. And again, only 2 downside negative notes here for Sebastian Castro. I'm definitely gonna be watching more of him because he is just so fun to watch, and maybe get a little bit more notes on him. Next up, we have Oregon's Jabbar Muhammad, the Washington transfer, headed to Oregon for his junior year, which is upcoming. 5'10", 183 pounds. Jabbar Muhammad, a very high energy, fired up, animated player that celebrates every rep when there's something to celebrate on any given rep. I mean, honestly, I don't know the sort of energy he has, because I would like it. That social battery must be up there. I cannot be like Jabbar Muhammad, even on a football field, even with adrenaline. I don't care. I'm not celebrating nearly or even half as much as Jabbar Muhammad is on a game-to-game, play-to-play basis even. I don't care. This guy gets fired up. Versatility to play the boundary and the slot. I think I like him the most when he's playing off man on the boundary, but he could play the slot too, slide in there, take a shifty receiver, whatever he needs to, or if that's their most dangerous receiver, most dangerous situations. Like, I don't know, Jabbar can play there. Like, again, I prefer him elsewhere, but he can play in the slot. He can show off his versatility a little. He's really good at hitting his back foot and closing or breaking on routes with the receiver. He'll mirror and maybe trail a little, but still breaks and closes in with the receiver. Kind of waits, and then right as the receiver's weight starts to shift, or when their first leg is, moving, Jabbar is going to be right there. He's going to try to anticipate the movement and again, close and break on some of those routes with the receiver instead of waiting, then mirroring and trailing. He's more of an anticipate, like close and then trail a little and keep himself within the play. Good instincts and ability to read around the line of scrimmage while in coverage. He can, try to make a play, but Jabbar just struggles wrapping up, but it is at least good recognition. He can take away an angle for a runner if it's a run play, or find some stuff underneath that maybe every corner wouldn't react to so quick, and still gets there and does what he can. But there's times where Jabbar just struggles to wrap up. He can get his head around and either track the ball or at least get his head around to be more aware and involved at the catch point, maybe not be penalized, but he is good at least getting it around, and that is a big struggle for some, and including Will Johnson, who we talked about at corner number 3. So it is something that, like, I can see a lot of struggles, and it kind of branches off into a bunch of things that you can be mixed up with, struggle with, or whatever. Jabbar at least does some of this stuff, and including getting his head around, preventing a lot more issues in those sort of situations. Catch point again, involved with the receiver, hand fighting, all that good stuff, weight on him and all that at the catch point. Like, his feet look good, and he hit his back foot, close break on routes, whatever you want to say. Sure, still just looks a little choppy and not exactly smooth. I think that there's just times where it doesn't look like I had seen and watched quite a few up to the point where I'd gotten to Jabbar Muhammad and I was like, ooh, what is that? In all caps, I have written down, not a tackler. This guy is weak against the run. It almost looks like he avoids tackling sometimes. Very slight contact can actually take him down or tip him over. It doesn't matter. Jabbar Muhammad, no, not someone you're going to bring onto your team to make tackles and have an impact against the run. His physicality and slight frame, he's just not a big guy, and even worse, he doesn't play that big either. He can get shadowed out at the catch point and really doesn't fight blocks that well. We talked about Benjamin Morrison, someone that is slight of frame, but he does play with good energy and strength, play strength, and puts himself in the right situations and uses the right leverages, attacks blocks, gets out of stuff. So not the same here with Jabbar Muhammad. Slight and plays small, which is a little bit of a bummer. You kind of hate that combination. There are guys that are big that play small, and there are guys that are small that play small, and he's one of those guys. Jabbar is really someone that fits an archetype that you either really like or you're just not a fan of. And personally, I'm not a Jabbar Muhammad stan per se, right? I think he's small and doesn't offer any run support, and I don't think he's an amazing athlete either. So definitely not like super high on Jabbar Muhammad, but I do have him over some of the more notable names in this class too that you probably are curious where they are. Denzel Burke, one of those notable names, Ohio State's senior, senior corners heading into his senior year, obviously at 6'1", 193 pounds. When there's nothing to do with his teammates, he has a clear-cut assignment to cover downfield. He can cover deep zones off man and stuff like that, or just even trail a 9 route really well, which is honestly just a go ball, by the way, in case you guys are curious what a 9 route is. It's just a straight vertical route that gets downfield, and he did a nice job and stayed solid in coverage. So it's flashes of good quickness or pivots to hit his back foot and crash down again if needed, because there are plays like swing routes, screen plays that he at least does a nice job seeing it and then can fly down after hitting his back foot, and if needed can make a play, make an impact, or at least, you know, impact the play in some sort of way. Patient, kind of conservative play style, help with stuff like double moves or just to give him a head start on a deeper route, playing off man or in deeper zones or even a middle zone. It just gave him a nice head start. Didn't really bite down, never really found himself over committing or found himself in a sloppy situation off press. We'll get to the downside already for Denzel Burke. There's very little run support, and when he does need to get involved, he's either too conservative and gives up yards and just really patient, or he's just an arm tackler and either gets shrugged off or gets tugged along for another like 3 yards or so. He just wasn't really a guy that I would again want in run support, much like Jabbar Muhammad. Some in-breaking routes seem to be a weakness. When someone could separate and pivot inside, Burke had a tough time staying stride for stride right there, close up and stick to him stride to stride. Honestly, there was a lot of someone breaks in and Denzel's trailing and couldn't close the gap or really couldn't stay there. Gets caught out in coverage time to time. It seems like he's just playing too far off or not playing with enough intensity or awareness at times. You know, someone flies up the seam and, oh, that's my bad, and he's looking the wrong direction, or doesn't really stay tall on his feet or up on his toes and doesn't do a nice job of recognizing where a route's coming in from, ends up blowing that and just gets caught out. Definitely struggles to see behind the line of scrimmage and maybe a little late when he's reacting to some of the outside runs or more elaborate plays that maybe require a little bit more of that awareness and seeing behind the line of scrimmage to really see what's going on in the course of a play. There's times where he might slip up in a deep zone, whether it's a miscommunication with teammates or he's just lacking awareness on the situation. Same thing we kind of talked about with getting caught out in coverage. And again, maybe points and expects his safety to take it and miscommunicado, nothing going on, and just gets burnt or just lets the guy run past into wide open space. Burke did a bit of everything, just not really consistent anywhere. He has his strength and had plenty of weaknesses. He can clean some things up. I'd love to see where he stands against the rest of this class, as he'd be a little bit older, more experienced after next year. Next, we got Louisville's Quincy Riley, redshirt senior, so a little bit older than everybody and actually a bit bigger too. 6', 195, holds a little bit more mass. He has effort and the ability to track the play through the whistle and always keep himself within reach of a touchdown saving tackle at least, which is really nice with Quincy. He never really gives up and tracks the play, keeps a nice heads up, I guess, mentality through the whistle. There's plays when he's a step ahead of the play at hand and reads the situation very quickly without blowing coverage, and it's really nice because some of these guys maybe sees a trick play or something and want to stick to it. Like, he just always seems to guess right and have some of that anticipatory gene in him that allows him to be a little bit more instinctual and pursue and follow a hunch in those sort of situations. The few snaps I saw when Riley was actually playing pressed up against his man, he looked more sticky, physical, and actually didn't get beat downfield, which is a surprise because he was often found in off-man coverage or even in some of those deeper zones where he's already playing 10, 12 yards off the line. When coming down to make a play on a screen pass or something of that sorts in the flat or whatever, he'll over pursue, take bad angles, and even get blocked out of the play or just run straight into a block. Quincy was very interesting in that sort of situation as well, because he did have times where he would come in unblocked, and that's where he was at his best. But when he actually had to work through traffic and anticipate where the runner would ultimately come out, what gap or to shoot, whatever, he was really poor at picking that and seeing some of the angles that he need to take to get there. Showed poor tackling as well. When he used his whole body, it typically resulted in him bouncing off the contact, and the rest of the time he'd just be diving at the feet. Very slight contact that he's trying to engage in. So Quincy Riley, again, poor tackling, not really the best. At 6', 195, one of the bigger guys, or at least he's listed a little bit bigger I'm a little interested to see if 195 is what he really comes out in this year and tacked on extra weight, because he didn't quite look or play 195 last year. He's not really a really fast guy. I figure that's why he plays so much off man, and I saw him line up against like Zachariah Branch, who USC's like crazy athlete, returner, everything like that, and he was even playing further off, like far, so he might have been concerned with some of that extra speed and knows that Zachariah Branch has a little bit of go-go juice in him and maybe not be able to match that pace that he sets on even a crosser or anything. Just not a real fast or really juiced up athlete. And finally, the last out of the guys I watched, Tacario Davis, Arizona's corner. People are going to absolutely hate me for this heading into his junior year. A lot bigger at 6'4" and only 195 pounds. And at that size, he's actually a guy that can wrap up. There's some smaller dudes that just can't tackle. Different story with Tacario Davis. He wasn't like elite or anything, but he can at least wrap up or make some of those tackles that not everyone in this class could. Good motor, and actually seems to be a really good teammate on tape between helping people up and trying his hardest for the team, and communication with his teammates, and again just the good motor that he displayed all around in that sort of aspect as a person on the field. He mainly plays zone on the outside, but flashes some good man-to-man reps where he's more physical and uses his length to his advantage, or physicality even to his advantage, with the long arms and being able to wrap up a little bit within the first 5, or even if he's playing off man, if the dude's going to try to run right past him, he can latch on pretty easily using some of that length in his arms. So I do like Tacario Davis more in the man-to-man situations, and tried to actually transfer out of Arizona, which I wasn't aware about that it was him, but I knew some corner was trying to move out. So now that I know it was him, I kind of wish that he had gone, because they have been playing a lot of off man, outside zone, stuff like that, and it's just like, I don't know, it's a little interesting. I thought he flashed man-to-man though. And we're already on to the downside with him, and it starts with the fact that he really struggled to mirror and match the receiver's breaks and cuts when running routes in general, all over the place. He just didn't have great footwork or anticipation, didn't have the ability to jump close or anything that I've talked about with corners before this point. Tacario really struggled to, again, just match and mirror some of the breaks, cuts on some of the out in and out breaking routes. Doesn't get his head around in contested catch situations, and he also gets a little aggressive and puts himself at risk of drawing DPI flags, draping over. Not necessarily the best in those situations either, despite his good size and length. Doesn't do the real technical stuff or put himself in the best positions because he's not really looking at the quarterback or the ball or tracking it. Lacks instincts and recognition as a run defender to start the play. There's guys that can cover and read the field simultaneously. Not really Tacario. Definitely to start, he's all focused in on his coverage assignment at hand. I don't really think that he saw behind the line of scrimmage or anywhere else other than his assignment and what he was required to be doing. So there wasn't a whole lot offered outside of that instinctually, or the way that he can really come down to be a difference maker. He didn't really have great hands or ball skills as a whole. He dropped a few interceptions and struggled to break passes up like others did in this class. Most of that stems from not being able to get his head around and track the ball or the play, because he's just kind of seeing the receiver's hands and trying to match that with his hands, and it just looked a little uncoordinated and not exactly the best way to go about things. So a few things that are definitely polishable, coachable, and improvable, if you will. Last but not least, I don't think he's a great athlete, and he definitely lacks the ideal ability to read and react with intensity and quickness to get there off man. When a receiver breaks in, you need to be there, especially if you're playing that far off. He lacks some of that to get there. And yeah, I get it. There's tools, there's traits with Davis, but that's all he is as a corner right now. 6'4", 195, cool traits, sick. I see why people like him, but I see no way he sticks with NFL competition in zone or man. He may have a better shot playing safety, though I do think he lacks some of the above average football IQ and instincts that kind of not required, but that help a lot at safety. That'll be it for me. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like, go down, subscribe, go watch any of the past content on the channel. I guarantee you like it, especially if you like this stuff. And again, I've went on all of the positions up to corner, and we just have safety to go before we're done with the summer scouting rankings. And let me know if you guys have any video ideas for me, anything you'd like to see, any player spotlights you guys want, from someone deep in this class, or I don't know. Let me know down below, and I'll see you guys next time, if there is a next time, of course. See you guys. Deuces.